I would suggest, I can't say it's impossible because you never know, but I would suggest that it's highly unlikely. Firstly, they need lots of agreements with the unions and with the interinos in particular, which is a very large group of people, and some of you may actually even be here. So they would need to move a lot before changing it for 2023. For 2025, I could definitely see it. I would expect it for 2025. But we're always going to have our eye on legislation. And as soon as legislation makes any type of change or move, we're on the ball to try and react as quickly as possible. But everything is dependent on active current legislation. And right now, at this present moment in time, those of you who have tried the Oposiciones already are more familiar with it. It's basically what Jose Luis had mentioned. Firstly, we've got Part A, which is a practical case examination with a text. Normally, this text is about 700 or 800 words long. You've got 6 different questions that you have to choose 3 of those questions from. For example, you've got a composition, you may have a translation. That's what's happened, generally speaking, over the years. So over the years, we've been looking at what type of exercises they put in the examinations. Occasionally, they throw in something a little bit surprising. I know they test something out, and if they like it, they might keep it. Or, I mean, we've seen one year we saw 2 essays appear in Oposiciones, and they ditched that later on. But we're seeing different tendencies in those practical cases, and we try and follow those tendencies and imitate those tendencies as much as possible. We also try and imitate their scoring procedures from the information that we have. So you've got a practical case examination, you've got a topic development. As Jose Luis mentioned, there's 69 topics. I'm not sure if he mentioned it or not. 69 topics, and they have a little bingo machine or whatever. They randomly select 5 balls from the 69 topics. We choose one of them and we write them in the examination, and that's Part A. Part A is your first hurdle. You don't get through Part A, you go absolutely nowhere. It doesn't matter how well you've done your scheme of work, your unit of work, doesn't matter how many merits you've obtained, doesn't matter at all. If you don't pass the first exam, then that's it, game over. What are the keys for success in this first examination? Well, having a good level of English is number 1, and that's obvious. If you've struggled with your English in the past, you've had indications that maybe you might have some difficulties with English, then now is the time to go and get help. To go to an academy, and I would even suggest, if you're in a really bad position, you might want to go abroad for a year and perfect your English as much as possible. Because if you don't have a good English level, that's going to be a gigantic obstacle for you. Having said that, we have coached students during this year, and there were some students who at the beginning of the course were struggling, and by the end of the course, thanks to their own, how do you say, espabile, and their examination training techniques, they managed to get through the exam. They managed to pass. So having a good level of English, I would say, is the number 1 priority. But your techniques, your preparedness in terms of having done mock examinations, familiarity with examination format, knowing what the examiners want, knowing what they don't like, those are our key issues, for example, for practical case areas. The other section is the topics. Now we've got topics which I at least update in certain aspects during each year, but it's also a good idea for us to know there are things about the topics that we can change to make them more original, to make them more unique, to make them more appealing to a panel, So that's another important area. Then we've got the scheme of work and the unit of work. Well, those are another 2 things. The written scheme of work and unit of work, of course, it has to be very well developed. But very often where they're making up their minds is in the oral defense. They look at you standing in front of them, they listen to you, they watch your posture, how you present your ideas, and public speaking is an incredibly important part of passing this second part of the examination. Of course, in order to be able to do a good job with the public speaking, you have to have a good program. You have to have it really well thought out. It has to be pedagogically sound. It has to be original. It has to be attractive to not only the panel, but to your potential future students in secondary education, because that's, at the end of the day, what this is all about. You've got a panel in front of you who are trying to decide, what's this person going to be like when they arrive in a class full of 30 students in Segundo de ESO with 15 people who failed English in the last year, and you've got a couple of people who are rowdy, some people with special educational needs. How are you going to, is this person going to be able to react well, respond well, etc.? Are you going to be able to motivate? Are you going to be able to give them activities that are accessible to them and at the same time provide a little bit of challenge as well? So the scheme of work and the unit of work has those two parts. It has the written part first, but this oral defense is fundamental. So how are we actually going to be, oh, and finally, what Jose Luis mentioned, the merits that you need are you need to maximize that. Firstly, within the rank of 3 points maximum that you can get, you want to get those automatically. Why? Because everybody has it. And if you don't have it, then you're the odd one out. Of course, in addition to that, people who have additional teaching experience, primarily, I'm talking about those who are interinos. Also, to a certain degree, and to a lesser degree, those who have worked in centros concertados, centros privados con el certificado oportuno y visto bueno del inspector. So those people can get additional points, etc. So those three areas, part A, part B, and your merits, is really what's going to determine your level of success within the oposiciones. But it's one step at a time. And very often the job of the panel of oposiciones is difficult because they're given a list of candidates, and what they have to do in the first round is eliminate as many people as they can. So what we have to do is a little bit of defense against the dark arts, as they would say in Harry Potter, and don't give the panel any excuse to fail us. That's really what we're looking at in part A. Part B is the same. They have to whittle things down because they have to give us a specific number, and that's it. And then finally, the merits that you've obtained are going to push you further into that teaching post. So, I mean, those are the essential areas that we're going to be covering. How will the operation take place? Well, we have classes on Friday evenings. Normally, we would have had, secondary education normally has the class on Saturday, but that's only when you've got Año de Oposiciones. This isn't an Año de Oposiciones. So in the academy, the priority is given to primary education. Okay, so they're expecting to have Oposiciones this year, so they've got Saturday, but we've got Friday. So Friday, we're there from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. We take a half-hour break in between. This is broken up into two parts. The first part focuses on the first examination, right? Let's say part A. And that would be for about 2 hours, 2 hours and a quarter approximately. And there we generally have a little teaching warm-up activity to break the ice. From the week before, we will have completed a practical case. So we go over that practical case, the different corrections, feedback, individual questions, etc. that people might have. And then we will look at some topics. Generally speaking, we will have 2 topics per week, except when we do our macro mock examination. I'll talk about the macro mock examination in a second. So 2 topics per week, but some weeks we're going to have 3 topics. If you do the math, we're only going to be here between October and May. Okay, since it's not a year of oposiciones, we've got these 8 months. And the following year, it's the full 10 months. It's September right up until the end of June. But we do want to get all of the topics out there. So between October and May, we need to finish El Temario. Okay, that's basically it. Now, normally, what I would have usually done was I gave people the option. I did a little questionnaire or a survey and say, okay, well, which topics do you want to do first? And they get back to me and they let me know. And based on that, I made some decisions. This year, it's going to be different. I've prearranged the order of topics in such a way that it helps us build upon topics, okay? So for example, what's the point of doing la expresión de la cantidad, which I think is like topic number 14, if we haven't done el concepto de la gramática, which is topic number 12. So there is a logical order within these topics. And the same thing goes with literature. A lot of the literature goes through literary periods. So why begin with like modern literature and then go back to Chaucer and then jump forward to Romanticism and then go back to Shakespeare? We're going to try and do these things in a more linear fashion. And of course, we're also going to be mixing the topics up in the sense that we're going to avoid doing like 2 literature topics the same day or 2 grammar topics the same day, because not everybody's interested in literature or not everybody's interested in grammar. So we try and mix it up to the best of our abilities. So that's basically, after that, we have some, a little bit of practical case preparation, okay? Where we look at the practical case for the following week in order, this isn't for everybody. So anybody who's not really interested can say, I'm going for a quick coffee or before we do this because I don't want any spoilers. But I generally find it's a very good way for us to reinforce the language because it repeats our encounters with difficult terms. Okay, we see it in class, we ask some questions. Hey, what does this mean? I've never seen this word before, it's so strange. And then, okay, right, you go home, you've forgotten about things for a while, you go in, you try and do your exercises with a little bit more of confidence, because that's a very important thing, having a little bit of confidence to tackle the practical cases, because the practical cases can be tough. And then you can come back the next week, we go over the corrections with it. So you've had 3 opportunities to come in contact with difficult language, right? And that should help us to assimilate some of that language. But you'll also have other opportunities when it's blind. In other words, at the end of every month, we're going to have an examination. Normally, it's a partial examination, a partial mock. It's up to you in that mock to decide what you want to do. Do you want to do a topic? Do you want to practice a topic? You practice a topic. Do you want to practice a practical case? You practice a practical case. And with that, you don't, normally during weeks 1, 2, and 3, you get actual corrective, you get some corrective feedback on a weekly basis. But the corrective feedback is based on a code. I have a code of corrections. And basically what I do is I highlight if you've made a mistake, and sometimes I tell you what the mistake is if it's quite complicated. But if it's something silly, like the grammar's wrong here, look at it, then it's up to you to fix it. So I say, for example, number 1 is basic grammatical error. And you go and you look at the sentence, I say, oh my goodness, I said she go. Right? So it's really up to you to go and find that. So by consciously focusing on what your mistakes are, you're able to avoid making those mistakes again. Of course, anybody who can't work it out always has the opportunity to ask me the question in class and later on in private sessions, etc. So that's basically session 1. In session 2, this deals with the scheme of work and unit of work. And here, during these, I don't know how long you're intending to prepare Oposiciones, if you're intending to prepare it this year and then go off to another country next year, or what you're intending to do. But the idea is for us to build a very good repertoire of interesting, motivating, useful teaching activities, because that's going to be the basis of your units of work. Units of work are comprised of lesson plans, and lesson plans are comprised of ideas. So if you multiply at least 12 units, okay, and imagine in those 12 units, you've got 8 lessons. So multiply 12 by 8. And then in each of those lessons, you've got, let's say, 5 activities. Well, multiply that again by 5. That's a big bank of activities. And the more ideas we get for activities, the more we can put them away, keep them in our little activities library, and pull them out later for later use whenever we're doing our units of work and our schemes of work. Of course, there we're also going to be looking at the legislative considerations. Legislation is our friend, okay? We might not like legislation, we might be afraid of legislation, we might not have read much legislation, but legislation is our friend. If we follow what legislation says, we won't have problems, or we shouldn't have any problems. If as soon as we go outside legislation, then that's tricky. For example, I know a person who once went to a panel and said, I'm not going to do an initial diagnostic test with my students because I don't think it's worthwhile. Okay? Now, that's an opinion you can have in a bar. But when the legislation says it's obligatory for you to include an initial diagnostic examination for your students, you must do it. It's as simple as that. So legislation is our friend, and following what legislation says is going to help us enormously. Now, with that legislation, we're going to use that to develop our scheme of work, which is the overall parts of the scheme of work, your general parts, your introduction, your contextualization, your methodology, your evaluation criteria, your attention to diversity, your assessment, etc. All of those things form part of the general scheme of work. And then you've got your individual units of work. As I mentioned, it's a minimum of 12. And that's weighted. It's 30% of your points go for the scheme of work and 70% of the points go for the unit of work. Even though the time distribution is equal, the points distribution isn't. So we have to be prepared to speak in a fluent way, in a natural way, so that you can convince the panel that your work is good and that you're a good teacher. The delivery is fundamental. I know someone who had a fantastic memory. And what she did was she read her performance, let's say, okay? Word for word, she read it and she recorded herself, and every day she listened to it. That was her strategy. And it was useless. It was a complete disaster. Why? Because we don't speak in the same way as we read. Written English isn't the same as oral English. So we've got to have enough knowledge of our scheme of work and unit of work and enough oral practice, along with the one-page guide that we can bring into the examination, to be able to defend that scheme of work and that unit of work in a natural and convincing way. So that's basically the structure of weeks 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so you've got the first block, which is examination part 1, and then the second block, which is examination part 2, which also includes, at the end, the final half hour of every class, we're going to be spending that with oral presentations. Okay, there'll be a timetable where people can sign up. In the first term, it's a 5-minute presentation. After the first few weeks. Second few weeks, it's a 10-minute presentation. And then the final few weeks, it's a 15-minute presentation. So it's gradually increasing so that everybody has the opportunity to speak. And there'll be a booking system whereby everyone has the chance. And I highly encourage everyone to make the most of that. So you get some sort of practice at seeing other people and also practicing yourself. I thought that it would be good to leave that for the end of the class, the last half an hour of the class. For those who say, no, I need to go early or whatever, great, off you go, or, and that's it. Also, I'll be making the most of for example, week number 4. Week number 4, the first part of the session at 4 o'clock will be the partial mock examination, okay? Generally speaking, I'm fairly flexible with these exams, and if people want to do the mock examination the 3 or 4 days beforehand, that's great. And then they join the class later, that's no problem. But that's the time I've assigned for that. But during that partial mock examination, I'm also going to be doing in another room at the academy or online or whatever, oral presentations. I need to find place, because what occupies the most time are oral presentations. They're individual, you know. An examination, everybody can do an examination at the same time, but an oral presentation, that's more difficult. So I'm going to be using that time also to catch up with those people who haven't been able to do an oral presentation or whatever. After that, the second part of week 4 will be a mishmash of everything, where we try and squeeze in the practical case, the topics, and any other parts of legislation or maybe activities for teaching and our repertoire that we want to add to that. Now, on 2 occasions, there's going to be a macro mock examination. I think the dates are at the end of December and at the end of March or something like around those times, okay? And that's going to be a 4.5-hour examination that where you'll have a better chance to actually feel what it's like to be writing for 4.5 hours. I will be selecting topics at random, as it would be in an examination, but it's up to you to have, you've got the flexibility to say, no, I don't know those topics, but I want to have the opportunity to practice. So you practice whatever topic you like, if that's the case. So that's basically the functioning of that. Now, another important part of this is feedback, okay? Feedback's fundamental. If we don't know where our mistakes are, we're going to make them again and again and again. And we know, anybody who studied a little bit about the provision of feedback know that there are many types. One type is teacher correction. Another type is peer feedback. But the third type is self-repair. And out of these 3, we know that self-repair is the best. Fix yourself, you know, heal thyself, physician. So basically, we try and get a middle ground between that. So if I'm looking at your practical case and I see that there's a mistake in some area, I highlight the mistake, or I say, there's something wrong here, fix it. Okay, and off you go and you fix it, and that's it. Rather than spoon feeding, it's a more active process. So you've got possibility of weekly feedback through Teams, right? Now, there are 3 different pieces of work. Well, there are 2 pieces of work that you can give me per week out of a maximum of 3. What are these 2 pieces? What are the 3 possible pieces of feedback? 1, practical case. Selected activities from the practical case. 2, maybe you've changed part of a topic and you want me to have a look at what you've written for the topic. And 3, maybe you've written part of your scheme of work or unit of work and you want me to have a look at that scheme of work or unit of work. Now, it's limited in size to 750 words for the topic and 750 words for the scheme of work or unit of work, okay? But every week, you've got the option to hand in those, whatever those pieces of work are. So that's one thing. The other thing is class feedback, of course, because when we're working with the previous week's work, maybe I've made some comments, maybe you want some extra clarification, maybe you've tried out a sentence and you want to talk about it in class and show it to class and say, well, I think this might be a good sentence, or I'm not sure, what do you think of this? And you can get some feedback for that. So you've got your individual weekly feedback, you've got your group class feedback, but also, generally speaking, after class normally on a Saturday afternoon or something, I give a little space for people who might have additional individual questions and say, Steve, can we have a quick chat? I need to clarify something with you, and we try and find a space for that. And your individual questions then would be answered. And the final piece of feedback are the scores that come from your mock examinations. Here, there are no corrections. In other words, I mean, what I do is on PDF or whatever, I just get a red or a green or whatever color pen. I might highlight something, but really what's important there is the score sheet that I give you, because the score sheet has different parameters for the exercises that you've completed or for the topic that you've completed. And that's basically that. And of course, you get feedback for your oral presentations. Okay, generally speaking, I'll give you in class. We're going to be giving positive feedback because this is a public performance, and I understand that it's difficult. But we'll try and maybe note down some ideas and give you and send it to you by through Teams. Okay, privately, and that hopefully would be useful for you as well. So basically, your keys to success in this are having a high level of English proficiency, having a well-executed practical case in the examination, a well-executed topic with sufficient number of topic study. One of the problems that I see are people going to the examination saying, oh, well, I studied 30 topics, I think that's enough. There's a little calculator online that says that if you do this, you've got like 90% of chance of the topic coming out. And then the topic doesn't come out. And after a year or 2 years studying, you say, well, what did I do? Okay, so the number of topics is you have to it has to be sufficient in number, but also in quality. Well-planned schemes and unit of work, good delivery in your oral presentation, and the maximum possible number of merits. That's basically all I've got to say, but I'm willing to take any questions that you might have. I can't guarantee you that I can answer them all, but I will do my best. Let's have a look at the chat here. Pilar, as there are people online, how can we do the presentations? Online, right? What I would suggest to you, if you're at home working, my son is studying architecture. What he did in his first year was to buy a whiteboard for his room. And he just covers it in drawings with his different markers. He bought some special markers that he loved and he was comfortable with, and great, fantastic. Get yourself a whiteboard, sorry, and put it up on the wall, and you can do your presentations from there. Now, maybe you've got one of these sheets of, do you know the sheets of paper that you roll over? Well, that could work. You know, that could work as well. But you need to show them your Blackboard dynamics. All right, it's going to help you and you know and try and give you a bit of experience with that. Let's see. I don't know. I hope I answered that, Pilar. Alberto, how many lessons do you recommend that a student has in order to be as best prepared as possible? Alberto, what do you mean? Oposiciones lessons? I don't understand the question. Do you mean, do I recommend you going for 1 year of oposiciones, 2 years of oposiciones? What do you mean? I don't know if you can open your microphone. Alberto? Are your microphones not working?
Sorry, it was broken, my Wi-Fi. So sorry.
Go ahead.
My question is, how many lessons you recommend to prepare for 2023? Like from 69 lessons, how many lessons more or less can I prepare for the exam? You mean
topics?
I mean topics, yeah, like 25 very good prepared lessons, or
as many as humanly possible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
As many as humanly possible. I know quite a few people who've prepared 25, 30, and they were good students, and because they said, no, this is the number that I want to study, and they were confident enough in that. From experience, I would tell you study more.
Good, thanks.
Better safe than sorry. Really, really better safe than sorry. And now this is a good time for it. So if you say, okay, if I was having this discussion with you in September next year, and it's the first time you'd ever done oposiciones, I would say, well, do your best to try and get 30, but we're at a different stage. And if you carefully plan things, you could have a very good overview of all of the topics, you know, and it's maybe do it in descending order. Have a very good view of all 69 topics.
Yeah.
Have maybe a better view of 60 of them. Have an even better view of 50. Have an excellent view of 30 or something like that. But don't go into the exam with the possibility of you saying, I can't answer this topic. You know, so I would recommend as many as humanly possible.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the question. Christina says, if we join this year and we continue next year, would we go over the same things again next year, or would there be different group for the people who started this year? That's a good question. Generally speaking, we have two groups. We have the vets and we have the newbies. Okay, that's in the years of oposiciones. So the vets go in one group and the newbies go in another group. Vets are generally people normally who have done oposiciones before, but it can also be those people who have progressed far enough during the first year that they want to go into the vets group. We would be going over the same things, essentially, changing things, getting extra practice, polishing things, etc. But 2 years is a good, I think, and for an average person studying oposiciones, 2 years is probably a good bet. Elena, could you show us a topic? Didn't the Academy show you one? Agatha, where are you? Agatha has a sample topic for you. Okay, so if you ask Agatha, she can get that for you. I sent it to her last week. How much time do you consider is enough to prepare a topic? Maybe a week. Well, you've got 2 topics per week. And you know, it depends, again, it depends on your own personal circumstances and situation. Maybe you say, I'm going to prepare my oposiciones in 2 years. Therefore, I can happily prepare 1 topic per week. Easily. And that still gives me time at the end to revise over other topics as well. So it really depends, because everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. Your strength might be in the practical case. Your weakness might be in you haven't got anything done for your scheme of work, a unit of work. Because you need to spend time on all of these different things, and it's up to you. For example, if you're a native speaker, maybe you say, well, I'm going to do the practical cases, but I can do them quite quickly. I'm going to do the topics. That's a lot of memorization, but I'm going to do my best to memorize them, and whatever might take me a little bit less time. But the scheme of work is a scheme of work. It's, you know, if you have a scheme of work already half finished, then you might want to spend more time on your practical cases and topics. So it really does depend on your own personal circumstances. But I think Alberto's question was extremely pertinent about how many topics we should have. And that's what you really should think of. How many topics do I want to have? What's my goal? Because once you have your goal, you can make a roadmap and you can plan in order to get to that goal. Elena says, I asked her and she didn't send me. Oh, I'll send her a message too. Okay. How long does it take to do a didactic program, considering the person who prepares works too? Esther, where are you? Are you around? Is your microphone there? Esther.
Sorry for my grammar mistakes.
No. Just explain to me. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, how long does it take doing a didactic program when you are working as a teacher, when you have less time, you know?
Yeah, I do know, because that's what I did. So I was working as a teacher in un centro concertado when I did oposiciones, and I didn't want anybody to know. So that often happens too. How often does it take you? There are so many different variables there, Esther, because there's work, there's family, there's relationships, there's hobbies, there's all of these different things. And in some way or other, if our goal is to be jumping up and down for joy on a beach in Almeria, where I was when I found out that I had passed, or at the Alhambra, you know, at somebody's wedding, that you're jumping up and down for joy, saying, "No me lo puedo creer," right? That I finally got this. What's that worth sacrificing? You know, so how long does it take to do a didactic program?
Yeah, I know it's a personal question, but regarding your experience with students who works and also study, I know it's personally, it depends also on my progress.
You can do it in 1 year. You can do it in 1 year if you know you're going full time at that. If you're going less than full time at that, you would probably need the 2 years, you know, to get everything really well developed. But it really does depend on your own personal circumstances. Can you do it earlier, quicker? Yeah, you can do it quicker. Now, the quality is going to vary. Your familiarity with what you've done is going to vary. But I would encourage people to try this year to get a draft version of all of the different parts, you know, to have a foundation. And that's what I said. This is like a foundation for your oposiciones in many cases. So try and keep up the pace and see how far you can push yourself. See how far you can push yourself without falling off a cliff.
Yes, and also we have to deal with topics and we have to do practical cases. So it's not only a didactic program.
But at the same time, Esther, you've also got to think of your advantages, right? If you're working in a school at the minute, you've got loads of advantages in terms, one, of points, and two, in terms of your access to materials, ideas, your common sense knowledge and grounding. And the fact that you have to do programs in the school that you're working with, right?
Well, it's not my case. I was working in a residence, so I wasn't a tutor, so it's different. My experience as a teacher.
but it can give you some ideas, teaching ideas and things like that. So yeah, it's hard to say. Each person's different. So, but if you want it, you've got to go for it. Really go for it. There's no half measures with this. If you want to get your oposiciones, you say that's it. That's my priority. It's my goal. That's what I want to achieve.
How much time do you consider a student must invest on a daily basis to didactic program or topics? And
it depends really, Esther, on your experience. I mean, if you're a teacher who's been working in the private sector for 10 years, you could probably pull it off in 3 months. You know, if you've never done a scheme of work in your life before, then you're talking about it's a longer process, I would say. But it really does depend on the person.
Okay,
here we've got another question that says, how many people are there per group, more or less, and are the lessons always on Saturdays? The lessons are never on Saturdays. The lessons are on Fridays. And the number of the group, there's a limit. I believe that the limit is 70. And that will be between people in class and people online. There is a limit. Next year, the limit will be greater. There'll be more people who can be there, but it's just me and I can only do so much. So I know that a lot of people are enrolled already. If you're not enrolled and you really want to get enrolled, talk to Agata as soon as you can. I'm not sure what the numbers are right now. Are oral presentations, whether on-site or online, obligatory? Absolutely not, Ismail. Nothing is obligatory. It's a free world. Highly encouraged, yes. And I know that some people have their own personal considerations. And for example, maybe they don't want to present in front of everybody. generally speaking, the presentations are going to be in smaller groups because it's at the end of the session and it's only those who want to stay. But it'll also be during examination times that you can do the oral presentation as well. So it's not necessary. It's not obligatory, but I think it's a very good idea. Will we be able during this year to prepare the program together with the topics and vote the following year to review everything? That's a possibility, Begonia. I would suggest, again, it's a foundation and you build on the foundation. You make it better. Okay, so your knowledge of the topics is better. Your contents of the scheme of work and the units of work is better. So I would try and get a base and build on that base. Do you think I will be able to do it with my degree of science? That's a good question, Anna. I don't know. I need to check it. I'm going to write that one down. Anna, is your nationality British?
Yeah. No, I mean, I was born here, but my parents are English.
What's your passport?
British, that's the question. I have just to enroll because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get my nationality on time because I thought it took less, but it seems it takes 2 years.
Yeah, when did you start applying?
No, I haven't, yeah.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, you haven't started applying yet? Well, as quickly as you can. I need to check.
Well, I have a Spanish daughter, so that's what I have to check if that's valid. Well, anyway, apart from that is, I do know you can do them with a science degree. What I was asking is, do you think the contents...
One of our students who passed, I think she had studied to be a vet.
That's it. I mean, legally, I know you
and
can.
And she was great. Her English was great. So I think
I just wondered if the contents, do you think they're too hard for me? If I've never studied grado de estudio inglés.
You are at a disadvantage in some ways, but if you've got a good level of English and it's above average, then that could help you. Let's say. But I know people who have done it who haven't done the grado de filología inglesa or traductores, and they've gone on, they've done a good oposición. One person who did her degree was philosophy, and she was absolutely amazing, but she was an amazing student too. You know, so it all everything adds up. It doesn't close the door, but it just means that certain things you're going to have to study for the first time. Yeah. However, we'll be going through over things, and that repetition is I think it's going to stand in your stead, and we can give you some extra material for you just to catch up.
But you have had students from different backgrounds. Okay.
Oh yes, absolutely. Successful students as well. Let's see, what day of the week are the line lessons taken? All of the lessons are on Friday between 4 and 5. Sorry, 4 and 9, okay? We start at 4 and we finish at 9 p.m. What should oral presentations be like during the first weeks? Oral presentations during the first weeks. That's a really good question. Basically, it's breaking the ice, okay? It's talking about teaching proposals that you like, that you want to show, a good idea that you've got, something that maybe could be included in a methodological section of your scheme of work, an activity that you've done in class that you enjoyed. It's basically getting to speak in front of an audience, right? After that, once we started to develop our introduction and context, well, then you're going to have more options. In addition to saying, no, I can either talk about some methodological points or attention to diversity or something. I can instead talk about the introduction and context. So as we go on, you're going to have different options and opportunities for that. Begonia, sorry to ask again, could you explain how do you help us prepare the program? Do you provide us with a scheme so that we can work from it? Sorry, I've never completed. Right, okay. I don't give a whole scheme of work to everybody. We build this from the ground up. But what I do give you are guidelines for each part, legal considerations, pedagogical ideas, and in addition to that, the opportunity for you to write your different sections, send it to me, and get feedback. All right. So that's basically the idea. we start working from the ground up, so everybody has an original scheme of work, but we're going to give you the scaffolding, right, around which you can put all of the different things. And of course, also, we've got to give people individual freedom so that it's not just a cookie cutter and people have this freedom to, within legislation, within the restrictions of legislation. Sometimes we can think that legislation is like a straitjacket and we can't move out of it. Well, it's true, we've got these restrictions, but within those restrictions, there's still a lot of room for creativity. And we're going to try and on the one hand say, we need to do this, but you can express yourself in this other way, right? Great. I said, I'd like to know when we start in October. The 1st of October. The day after I get back from Poland. I'm off to Warsaw next week. I've got a meeting about bilingual education, a bilingual education project we've got going in Europe, and I'm back, and on the 1st of October, we'll be there. I can't do Fridays this year, but I'm not new to Oposiciones, but I do need help with the plan. Could I do a program in 1 year if I enroll next year? Yeah, you could. In the meantime, Che, what I would suggest is for you to think, well, what are my weak points, if I've got any? What can I do to improve during this year? I've already mentioned a whole lot of different things that we need to have. We need to have a good level of English. We need to have the méritos. We need to work on topics. We need to start to develop a program and everything else. Well, you can't do Fridays. Maybe you can start to advance on your own autonomously or whatever. But I'm sorry, I can't help you there with any further information. But yeah, I would definitely encourage you to not leave it to the last year. There will be people who will be starting Oposiciones next year in September for the first time, recién salido del máster or whatever. And fair play to them. I mean, they want to have their shot at Oposiciones too, absolutely. But you want to have a cutting edge. You want to have an advantage. You want to have a lead. So the more that you can do this year in preparation for your Oposiciones, the better. It's a highly competitive sport, Oposiciones. So you want to be as best prepared as possible. Listen, I'm going to take one more question because it's told me that I've got 1 minute or 2 minutes left. Begonia, you got your hand up? Begonia? Okay. I don't know if there are any other questions to finish off.
Momento.
Okay. Those of you who are enrolled at the Academy, I am available on Teams for quick questions. But I wish you all the best in your future endeavors, whether you're at the Globe or whether you're not at the Globe, wherever you are. I wish you all the very best in your preparation for Oposiciones this year and next year. And I wish you all the best of success. Thank you very much, Tieb. It's a pleasure also to have met you. Take care and have a good one. Okay?
Thanks.
All the best. Thanks, Alberto, for your feedback. Great, Pilar. Cheers. All the best. Esther, Beatriz. Have a good one.
Tenemos un curso gratis para ti. Haz clic en el enlace de la descripción para ver mucho más contenido. Y ya sabes, si te ha gustado el vídeo, dale a like y suscríbete a nuestro canal si aún no lo estás. Venga, dale clic. Nos vemos en próximos vídeos.